2 Spider-Men detected. Ned's tracker finds Spider-Man's exact location, then the app refuses to confirm it. It pins him to one block in Queens, and instead of locking on, it repeats one line, location unknown. The camera pulls back past the city, past the moon, until Earth is barely a speck in frame. The screen glitches, first red, then a burst of shifting colour, and a second signal appears floating in open space. The tracker finally says location found. 2 Spider-Man signals now exist at once, one on Earth, one nowhere near it. The film never explains where that second signal comes from. The most repeated theory ties it to a multiverse collision, forming one shared reality, though the film never confirms it. The movie ends without saying which Spider-Man is out there, and it spent its entire first act refusing to confirm someone else's identity too. Jean Grey unmasked. She isn't introduced as a mutant or a hero. She's introduced as an unnamed telepath, jumping from body to body, breaking into government facilities, chasing something she won't explain, and for months before release. The studio wouldn't confirm who she even was. Viewers spend the first half of the film assuming the worst about her. Only later does the movie confirm her full name, Jean Elaine Grey. No alternate timeline, no multiverse origin story. She was born inside this universe, the same way Peter was. That detail changes the shape of the mystery. It means the MQ now has a mutant, with no outside explanation for her powers, and no one has explained why people like her are suddenly appearing. That question doesn't stay open for long. The answer starts with the person the film spends the whole first act framing as the threat. Jean was never villain. For most of the runtime, Jean Grey looks like the threat. She attacks facilities, hijacks mines, and puts innocent people in danger. Then the film flips that entirely. The real villain is damage control, and specifically Bill Metzger, who has spent years running illegal experiments on telepaths, trying to weaponize their abilities. Jean wasn't hunting the city. She was hunting the people who imprisoned and studied her sister. Once that becomes clear, every earlier break-in reads differently, not random violence, but a captive trying to reach someone who could never answer. Metzger's cover story falls apart the moment Peter sees the lab himself. The comics already frame Metzger as an anti-mutant figure, which means this isn't his last appearance. It also means Jean was never chasing a place. She was chasing a person, and the movie hasn't told you who yet. VMAX's heartbreaking secret. Jean spends nearly the entire movie chasing 3 letters, VMAX. She believes it's a place, maybe a weapon, something worth risking her life to reach. The truth is smaller and far more devastating. Her sister Sarah was held in a containment cell for years, experimented on the same way Jean would later be. Before she died, Sarah sent one final psychic image to her sister, a partial glimpse of a label stamped above her cell. Jean only caught part of it. What she read as VMAX was actually the start of a longer word on the ventilation system. She wasn't searching for a target. She was searching for the room where her sister spent her final years alive. The reveal reframes every break-in before it. It also explains why Jean's power starts growing the moment she finds that room. Grief hits her hardest exactly when Peter is starting to lose control of his own body. Peter's dark mutation. Peter doesn't get infected, and he doesn't get bitten again. His transformation starts with something far more human, an emotional breaking point. Watching MJ move on with someone else hits him harder than he expects, and it stirs up a memory he's never fully processed the moment Aunt May first found out he was Spider-Man. That spike sets off something dormant in his own Dina. He wakes up with heightened senses, greater strength, and organic webbing firing uncontrollably from his wrists. Messier, and far less controlled than anything he's shown before. Panicked by what he's becoming, Peter turns to Bruce Banner for help, someone who understands suppression better than anyone alive. Banner warns him that forcing a mutation down permanently isn't safe. Peter doesn't listen closely enough, and the next person John threatens is someone Peter never manages to fully protect. John wears Minji's face. Jean doesn't just threaten Peter, she gets inside the one person he's tried hardest to protect. To force Peter out of hiding, John threatens Minji directly, and Peter makes the call to keep her somewhere safer, on Frank Castle's boat, away from the fight entirely. It doesn't work. John possesses Minji's body, uses her voice, even her memories, to convince Peter she's finally recognized him. Then, still wearing Muir like a mask, she kisses him. Moments later, she drops Muir off the edge of a building. The staging deliberately echoes one of the most famous tragedies in Spider-Man history, the death of Gwen Stacy. Peter saves her this time, but the damage isn't only physical. Muir survives the fall, yet what Jean did while wearing her face is something Peter still has to answer for. In a building he's about to break into himself, Savage Hulk returns. The one person trying to help Peter control his power ends up losing control of his own. Inside Damage Control's headquarters, Jane forces her way into Bruce Banner's mind and shatters the inhibitor, keeping the Hulk suppressed. It doesn't bring back the calm, controlled version fans got used to. It brings back Savage Hulk, the original, far more dangerous version of the character. What follows is one of the film's biggest fights, Peter and Frank against a Hulk who isn't fully himself. Even at his most out of control, Savage Hulk holds back from killing Peter, a detail that says more about Banner than any line of dialogue could. Peter finally gets close enough to place the inhibitor chip on Jean, breaking her control. The fight ends, but Jean says one word before she goes down a name Peter has never heard her use before. Peter's memory changes Jean. For most of the movie, Jean can read minds without ever feeling what's inside them. That changes in one quiet scene near the end. Peter finally lets her all the way into his memories, something he's refused the entire film. She's pulled into the moment Aunt May first learned he was Spider-Man, the same memory Peter has been protecting since the story began. This time, Jean isn't watching from outside, she's standing inside it, hearing May's reassurance that people love him for who he is, not for what he can do. For the first time all movie, she isn't reading a mind, she's standing inside one. It's the first real comfort Jean receives instead of suspicion or fear, and it changes what she's willing to do next, because seconds later, someone outside that memory makes a decision that has nothing to do with comfort at all. Punisher nearly kills Peter. Frank Castle spends the whole movie trying to protect people. In this moment, he nearly costs Peter his life instead. Unaware that Jean has just pulled back from the edge, choosing not to hurt anyone else, Frank sees only a telepath capable of leveling the city. He lines up a long-range shot meant to end the threat for good. Peter senses it seconds before it fires and throws himself in front of Jean to take the bullet meant for her. It's a serious wound, the kind that needs a hospital and time he doesn't have. Jean, now controlling her telekinesis with real precision, keeps him stable and controls his breathing until Frank can get him to help. The moment flips their earlier dynamic. Completely, the woman Frank tried to kill becomes the reason Peter survives the night, and Frank has to live with how close he came to being wrong. 3 exits, 1 mystery. The movie closes with 3 exits happening almost at once. Jean boards a bus heading upstate, alone, with no destination named on screen, though the direction strongly suggests a place built for gifted young mutants. Bill Metzger disappears entirely, escaping with Peter's own power-dampening technology, leaving Damage Control's next move completely unknown. And Peter runs into Ned at their old bodega, doing their signature handshake without thinking. Ned remembers him instantly, muscle memory succeeding, where Doctor Strange's spell couldn't quite reach. Mur isn't as lucky. Even reading Peter's full letter only restores her curiosity, not her memories. Metzger is still out there with tech built to suppress people like Jean, and whatever Ned's tracker found floating in space at the very start of this breakdown, it's still pinging, because wherever Peter ends up next, it isn't on this Earth.